Today we're talking about the Xbox 360. This is my favorite of the Xbox consoles, and I honestly think that there are some amazing games on this system. So I figured, since I'm on this top 10 kick of video games, that I'd give you guys my top 10 Xbox 360 games. Coming in at number 10 is Peter Jackson's King Kong. This is one of my favorite movie games ever released. A very fun adventure, and I'm a huge King Kong fan, and it was so awesome that we finally got a badass King Kong game. Most of the game you play as Jack Driscoll in first-person shooting levels, but for the rest of the game, you actually play as Kong, and I kind of like that. I like that Kong's only in about a third of the game. It makes his levels so much more fun, and they're the best part of the game. But the first-person shooting aspect is really good too. A great survival FPS / third-person action game that's really fun, and one that I highly recommend. Coming in at number 9 is Rockstar's Max Payne 3. This is actually my least favorite of the Max Payne franchise, and the biggest problem with this game is that you can't skip the damn cutscenes. And this game is like half cutscene, much like Metal Gear Solid 4. But if you can look past that, you're going to get a really awesome third-person shooter with great shooting, amazing graphics. It's one of the best looking 360 games out there, but it was released very late in the console's lifespan. Really fun, really entertaining, and I wish they would actually revamp this game where you can skip the damn cutscenes. It's not as good as the first two, but the action is great, and I had to make this list. Coming in at number 8 is a game that I think is actually very underrated, and that's Splinter Cell Double Agent. This is a great Splinter Cell game, and the last good Splinter Cell game. I do like Conviction and Blacklist, but those games are more action stealth shooters. They have some stealth, but mostly action shooting. Whereas this is the last true stealth Splinter Cell game. It's also released on the original Xbox in a completely different version, which I recommend that one as well. But the 360 version I think is really good, and I think this game is highly underrated. Coming in at number 7 is Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. One of the last Spider-Man games where it actually has levels, much like the ones that I love on the PS1, as well as the first PS2 and Xbox Spider-Man game. This game, you play as 4 different Spider-Man, or Amazing, 2099, and Ultimate Spider-Man. This is a very entertaining game that has a unique story that essentially is similar to the current Spider-Man movie that came out, because there's multiple Spider-Men from different dimensions. I love this game, and it's one of the most fun Spider-Man games out there. It's a bit pricey these days, but if you can get your hands on it, I do recommend it. Up next is another great movie game, Ghostbusters, the video game. This game is phenomenal. And what's great about this game, they actually have all 4 of the Ghostbusters actors voicing the characters. That's right. You got Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and even Harold Ramis. May he rest in peace. It's really fun, and it has 7 action-packed levels, which does seem kind of short, but they're actually pretty well-packed. Each level's about an hour long. The game's not super long, but that is a decent length for a movie-based game. And if you have yourself a modern console, the game was actually re-released in a remastered version. Very fun. Play it. Up next is a game that a lot of people don't tend to like, and that's Superman Returns. This is the best Superman game ever released. This is a fun game where you get to go around Metropolis in a free roam city, flying around as Superman, going, 1,000 miles an hour. The combat is a little bit clunky, and I say that's probably the worst part of the game, but if you get used to it, it's not that bad. It's just a little clunky. The controls are pretty good, the flying is really good, the story is a bit haphazardly thrown together. It's essentially the movie story, which has very little action, thrown in with a bunch of action scenes that never happened with villains that aren't featured in the film. But apart from that, it's still a really damn good movie game. I really recommend it, and if you love Superman and you want to play a good Superman game, this is the best one to date. Coming in at number 4, and probably controversially again, is Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. This is not a good Banjo game, because it's not a Banjo game. You don't go around as Banjo-Kazooie platforming and collecting things. Instead, you build these essentially Lego-like cars. And that's what I love about this game. You can just essentially make any vehicle you want, and there's vehicular combat that you can use the vehicles in. And I really do love it. I will admit it's a poor excuse for a Banjo game, but the concept itself is really great. If they had just called it Nuts and Bolts and had different characters in it, like maybe if this game starred Banjo's sister Tootie instead of Banjo, people wouldn't hate it so much. So I do admit, not a good Banjo game, but a very fun game nonetheless. Coming in at number 3 is my absolute favorite Elder Scrolls game, and that's Elder Scrolls 4: Oblivion. This game is highly entertaining and even works on modern consoles. There's also a version on the PS3, which I think is probably a little bit better graphically, but the 360 version is the one that I grew up with and one that I played the most. And a lot of people will put Skyrim on the list, and I do like Skyrim, but if I'm being completely honest, I think that Oblivion is the best of the Elder Scrolls series. If you love a grand adventure with an amazing story, fun gameplay, and limitless stuff to do, you have to play The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Coming in at number 2 is one of my favorite zombie games of all time, and that is Dead Rising. I adore this game. I'm actually not a huge fan of the sequels. I think Dead Rising 2 was kind of special, especially off the record where you get to play as Frank again. And I think 3 was ambitious, but felt like a downgrade. And at 4, don't even get me started on that piece of crap. But Dead Rising 1 is still an amazing game. I love on the front, it literally says that this game is not affiliated in any way with George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, even though that's clearly just a ripoff of that movie. It's a guy with a bunch of survivors alone in a mall, and you have to fight off zombies. That's just Dawn of the Dead. So this is probably the best Dawn of the Dead game that's not actually called Dawn of the Dead. Very entertaining, really fun, and if you don't have a 360, it is available on modern consoles as well. I love this game, and if you want to go around just kicking zombie ass in a mall, check it out. But none of them can beat my absolute favorite 360 game, and that is Hitman Blood Money. This is the absolute best Hitman game ever released, and it's one that I think is just incredible. This game is the fourth of the Hitman franchise, and every level is big and sprawling, and you basically have to go around as the Hitman, Agent 47, and take out your assigned targets. It's up to you to find out how you want to take these targets out. Almost limitless different combinations, multiple different disguises, amazing levels that range all the way from high-class weddings to secret S&M parties, all the way to Mardi Gras. This is just a great game. I actually grew up in Louisiana for a large part of my childhood, and several different levels in this game take place around that area, including an actual Mardi Gras parade, which I think is just so damn cool. So when I play this game, it kind of reminds me of my childhood, at least as far as location goes. My absolute favorite of the Hitman franchise, my favorite 360 game, and one of my favorite games of all time. Hitman Blood Money is a 10 out of 10, and you have to play it. It is the best of the Hitman franchise. Well, that's my list, but I decided I'd give you a few honorable mentions before we go. First up, Red Faction Guerrilla, a really fun free roam game where you're on Mars, and you get to destroy buildings and bridges and other things like that while fighting this corrupt government. Really fun, really entertaining, and one of the best free roam games on 360. Incredible Hulk, a really fun free roam superhero game where you get to fight enemies while causing destruction throughout New York City. Basically, it's in the same vein of Hulk Ultimate Destruction, but it's just more like a more polished version of that. Condemned Criminal Origins, as well as its sequel, Condemned 2 Bloodshot. Two really fun psychological horror games where you basically hunt down serial killers while also trying to maintain your own sanity. These two games are really fun, but I think the first one is a good bit better. But I do recommend both of them. That's right, asshole. Don't judge me. Duke Nukem Forever. This game is flawed. I do admit that it takes on a little bit too many of the modern shooter tropes, and it's not as inventive as the original Duke Nukem games. But I still do love this game. The king is back, as it says right here, and Duke Nukem has never been funnier or more badass than in this game. This game was so damn close to making the list, and that is Lost Odyssey. This is an amazing turn-based RPG created by one of the original creators of Final Fantasy. This game has an amazing story, really, really good graphics and gameplay, and music as well. The game is so long that it actually spans across 4 different discs, and it's one that I highly recommend. If you want a fun adventure RPG, you have to play Lost Odyssey. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, you will love this game. I also recommend X-Men Origins Wolverine, a really badass, gory hack-and-slash superhero game that's based on the PG-13 movie, but actually has an M rating. This game takes that crappy-ass movie and unleashes a badass game we will never live up to. I also recommend the Orange Box. Very entertaining, with a lot of good games included, including Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Team Fortress 2, and Portal. All great games. It's pretty much the ultimate Valve collection. You cannot miss the orange box. I also recommend Silent Hill Downpour, the sixth official Silent Hill game in the main story. It's really fun and entertaining, but it is a little bit clunky in some of the combat mechanics, but still a great Silent Hill experience. I also recommend Fallout New Vegas, probably my favorite Fallout game. This game almost made the list as well, but it got slightly beat out by the other ones. But a really fun, free roam shooting RPG game in the style of Elder Scrolls. If you love Max Payne, you're going to love John Woo's Stranglehold. A basically third-person action shooter with slow-mo shooting, diving, and badass action where you get to play as Chow Yun-Fat. A great game all the way through. The best of the Burnout franchise, Burnout Revenge. A hardcore, balls-to-the-wall racing game where you crash into each other at high speeds while trying to take the victory. Really fun. Check this game out. One of my favorite westerns of all time, Gun. I adore this game. I think it actually has some of the best voice acting I've ever seen in the game, with voices such as Thomas Jane, Tom Skerritt, and even Lance Hendrickson. This game is purely gory, fun, western action, and I actually think it's a bit underrated and doesn't get the credit that it quite deserves. Really fun. Check it out. Lastly, Fight Night Champion, one of the best boxing games of all time. There's actually a DLC mode on here called Bare Knuckles where you get to fight without gloves, and it is so gory. The most violent boxing game ever. Really fun, and it's awesome that you can play as classic fighters such as Rocky Marciano and even Muhammad Ali. Check this game out. Highly recommended. Well, that's my list. I thank you all for watching, and I know this one might have been a little bit long-winded, but I did have a lot to say about this console. One of my favorite consoles of all time, and if you want to check out the 360, a lot of these games actually work on the more modern consoles like the One, and you can actually pick yourself up a 360 relatively cheap these days. I thank you all for watching, and peace out.